Oscar 24/7. Mike Schaefer, good morning.
Schaefer.
Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing today on a Friday?
We are doing wonderful. I got lots of questions for you, but I want you to know something because your favorite baseball team won 3 of 4 against the Twins, who have a just god-awful offense. Did you know that as you wake up this morning that the Guardians and the White Sox have the same run differential, but one team is 18-13 and the other is 9-23? That run differential is minus 24.
Yeah, no, I did know that. It's been back-to-back days of seeing something statistically on the internet involving the Guardians that just sort of like hit me. The first one before, so this would have been going back before yesterday's game. Kyle Manzardo had a batting average under, I don't know, it was like under 210 or something, or had basically he had a batting average on balls in play like under 210 and a OPS over 900. And the only other baseball player in history to have something like that was Roger Maris in 1961. So I was pretty jacked about that. Significantly less excited about the run differential as it relates to being in the same category as the White Sox, losing how they did to the Twins and the Red Sox by 9 runs on back-to-back days on Sunday and Monday. Probably jacked that up quite a bit, but Cleveland always wins their games like 4-2.
Yeah,
so,
they do.
It's kind of hard for them to build the big run differential, it seems.
Hey, if I remember correctly, didn't you go to the Kentucky Derby a couple of years ago?
Oh,
I sure did.
How was that?
It was amazing. I was in a suite on the first turn, so I didn't have to be in the infield with the peons, the thousands of people. So it basically ruined the experience for me because I could never go back.
Sure.
Because if I don't have a 3-floor suite where I'm getting free food, free beer, and then there's gambling machines, so I never have to stand in a line anywhere.
Oh my God!
It was incredible. It really was, and it's an amazing event. I love telling the story about going into the gift shop because I wanted to pick up something for my dad, and there's these 2 women that are in just immaculate dresses, the hat, the whole 9 yards, and they are fighting over the last $40 spaghetti strap shirt. And it's just incredible to me because I'm sure combined they neither it's not about they just need this shirt to signify that they were there. It just was nuts. It's a really, really well done event. And then if you've never been that close to horse racing, being on the first turn, there is absolutely no room between those horses. I just don't think TV does it justice what that actually looks like and the spacing and how hard that has to be if you're locked in. If you can't maneuver at all, you're just sort of stuck, and there's just not a lot of space to move and operate. And it gave me an entirely different appreciation for something I've watched my whole life.
Sure.
And then Columbus has had horse racing, and so it's not like I'd never been to horse racing before, but just seeing it from that perspective and at that level, it was just incredible. And then, we all know about the one race that's televised, but the Kentucky Derby, I think, is 12 races on that day.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of different things going on. I learned about all sorts of different styles of bets to make. I didn't do that badly overall, but it was a really good time. And then Louisville's a weird city, so you get that going for you too.
Shout out Gary Schaefer, who was the announcer in Columbus. Okay, people are waking up this morning and they're already digesting a quarterback that will not show up in Lincoln for a while. But then into their laps falls a place kicker. One kicker goes out earlier this week. Another kicker joins, and we're like, well, the roster's at 105. Are they going to grandfather? How did we get to Nebraska adding another kicker? And what do you see the benefit that Kyle Coonan could add to a room that has a John Hole and a Tristan Alvano already in it?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if is coming with one of those two guys. It makes you wonder if this is just a break in case of emergency because John Hole didn't kick this spring with injury, and then Tristan Albano missed all of last season with an injury. It makes you wonder if Mike Eckler, who got here after the portal had already ended, has a different view of the type of specialist that he wants, which I think is kind of obvious given that Jack McAllister, the punter, didn't really fit what he wanted and went into the portal earlier and is now at Purdue. So I think it has something to do with those things. I mean, look, Nebraska has to get it figured out from a specialist standpoint. So a bigger room in the sense of more options and may not be a bad thing in that if it's not happening for Mike Eckler, if he went through the spring and just wasn't impressed by what he had from a kicking perspective, then if there was somebody out there that he did like, it sort of makes sense to at least just try it. I don't really know what to make of special teams, and I'm sure I won't know until we're halfway through the season.
Mike, considering the fact that there was a lack of previous connection, considering the state that Trae Taylor was located in, where it's not necessarily a state over the last couple of years Nebraska has dominated, and when you factor in the competition that Nebraska had to defeat in order to get Trae Taylor, is it crazy to say that this is the best high school recruit acquisition that Matt Rule has had as the coach of Nebraska football?
I don't know that we could say that it's bigger or better than Dylan Raiola. I don't know that I would. I don't know that I could get there.
Okay.
Because I like some of the other people that they have added. I mean, I think Dawson Merritt and Cortez Mills are two really big ones. I know that from a recruiting ranking standing, Ja'Cory Barney isn't going to be up there, but I think people probably remember that recruitment a little bit, like holding off Miami at the very end, and no one thought Nebraska was winning that on the day that the commitment actually happened. So there's some other ones in there, but the Trae Taylor one is fascinating to me because I think it's a really good fit in terms of an organization that has its ducks in a row of what the quarterback room is going to look like by the time someone were to enter the picture in 2027. The fact that Dylan Raiola's eligibility would either be a senior or more likely will be heading to NFL draft process in January of 2027, which opens things up for a Trae Taylor. I think Nebraska loves the idea of grabbing a quarterback early that can help in terms of peer recruiting. I think they've done a really nice job with the 2027 class in particular of getting people to campus early. And so then if you now have this quarterback in Trae Taylor, who's super mature, well-spoken guy, he's going to be able to help you in that process. Like, I think
it's a great point.
The thing that he brings that you didn't ever get with Dylan Raiola is the peer recruiting aspect. If this kid is able to stay as a top 100 player in the country, if he is able to continue to go around the country and meet with different recruits, because this is already something that he was doing anyways before he was committed. It's a big portion of why he wanted to commit early. He's going to be really helpful in a way that Dylan Raiola never got to be as a recruit because he didn't commit to Nebraska until the very end of the process, where this is someone who's committed to Nebraska so far out in advance, you get the reactions of, well, it's hard to care because it's still 2 years from when he's going to be on campus. So it's wildly different ends of the spectrum. But if Nebraska is able to take advantage of that and Trae Taylor can be a bit of a Pied Piper, it could be big for Nebraska's future recruiting. No question about it. And then you mentioned this. This is one of the small things inside of all of it. The previous couple staffs, whether it be Frost or Riley, didn't attack the state of Illinois the same way that Bo Pelini did. Nebraska's gotten some good players out of Illinois, and it feels like this staff, and in particular the work that EJ Barthel has done in Chicago, is treating Illinois a little bit different. And that might be one of those states where we see Nebraska have a little bit more traction or a little bit more run in the coming years. And then adding Trae Taylor certainly is going to help, or is it going to hurt?
Yeah,
in that regard.
Okay, so it is a long time before it's official. Anything about the lead up to this and yesterday and his reaction to the pushback from Illinois fans say, you know what, I'm not going to be as worried about him flipping or not coming through? I mean, it's a long time. There's NIL. We don't know what the landscape will look like. Any hesitation?
I think there has to be, right? Like I can't stand here and tell you that with 100% certainty Trae Taylor is going to sign with Nebraska in 2027 because we don't know. We don't have. I guess kind of a joke here. We don't have a crystal ball for what the future looks like, and so the statistics would tell you it's probably 50-50 whether a commitment keeps this long. You can look at a quarterback on Nebraska's own roster right now, and Dylan Raiola, who committed to Ohio State at the same roughly time that Trae Taylor committed to Nebraska. I think some of the difference here is that the relationship is really, really strong between the Taylors and Nebraska. I think there's a good feeling for what is in Lincoln. I think the Taylors also look at Nebraska as a rocket ship that is about to take off, and they want to make sure that they have their spot reserved and that they can be there, because if this thing gets into orbit, there's going to be a lot of interest and a lot of people who want to be part of it. I think got a better chance than most because of the people involved. He didn't have to decide yesterday. I think some of it was they wanted to have this over with so they could focus on helping build and not have to worry about taking recruiting visits and doing all these other things. And it also helped. Illinois isn't, it's what, a 7-hour drive, a 1-hour flight, like the access to Lincoln, the access to Nebraska. It's not like you're pulled this kid from deep in Texas or in Georgia or in Florida. You got a Midwest guy, and I think that helps in this whole thing.
What does it say to you? Because, the obvious connection to Nebraska with Dylan, but since then, and Latif, and then we jump to 27. I'm going to take Dayton out of the mix and put him in with his brother. What did you learn about the way Nebraska has attacked the quarterback room, and what did you learn about the past history of not having a seamless transition from a really good quarterback where it's not Eric Crouch handing off to Jamal Lord in his first year or Adrian Martinez handing off to Casey Thompson? It could be Dylan handing off to his brother, Latif, and then they just hand off to the next one. What's your general feeling about the way Nebraska has attacked quarterback recruiting in the last couple of years?
I think it tells you everything, right? Because what did that room look like when they got here? Even before Jeff Sims was involved. Like, that was a mess. They inherited a room where you had what? Purdy. You had Purdy. You had Thompson, who was injured, and you weren't sure what he was going to do, and there's a big personality dynamic with his dad. You had Logan Smothers, who wasn't going to be a fit for what you wanted. I think Richard Torres. Like, it's just, think of these names. None of these guys have gone on to play Power 5 football. Like, Casey Thompson didn't go play Power 5 football. I guess he was a backup at Oklahoma, right, or somewhere. But they went out and they rebuilt this room, and they built it in a really smart way. They were able to get fortunate in that Dylan Raiola decides at the last second that he wants to go to Nebraska because he's not going to sit out. The reality is, if Nebraska had a quarterback, he wasn't probably going to come here in 2023 or 2024. But that's done and over with, and you have him. And then you went and followed that up with TJ Latif, which nobody thought you could do anyways, because it was going to be really hard to get a quarterback that would want to sit behind Dylan Raiola. And yet here's someone who had a really big spring. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. He's going to have a redshirt year here, and then you're going to have to, convince him that the opportunities to go elsewhere aren't as good as the opportunity of sticking around and giving yourself a shot in 2027. Then you have Dayton Raiola, who you're taking a developmental shot there, but you like your room as it is, so you don't have to go out and get anybody else. And then they went and got a top 70 player in the country for 2027. Like, it is impressive what they've managed to do. And I understand, like, people are like, hey, what about Jet Tamala? What about Braylon Warren? And it's unfortunate because, Nebraska doesn't always have Power 5 or Power 4 level quarterbacks inside the state. But I think you have to at least allow for Nebraska to have the vision of what they want to do. And if it doesn't include those in-state kids, it doesn't mean they're not good. I think Braylon Warren has clearly proven that he's good. Jet Tamala has proven that he's good. They deserve the opportunities that they're getting. It just doesn't have to be at Nebraska. And I think Nebraska's positioned themselves with a quarterback room that's as healthy as we've seen it in a long time. And It includes two guys in Rayola and Taylor that aren't going to be here for a bit. But even the room right now, like I felt better about things and I didn't even mention Marcos Davila. Like I feel better about this room this year than I certainly did last year. I feel better about kind of the direction of this than I have previously. And then you have the Dana Holgerson effect. Like, what if Dylan has a massive season? Then suddenly the Nebraska quarterback position is something that's coveted around college football. Like we're still in the infancy of how good this could all look.
When Matt Rule came here in his first year and in his first couple of press conferences, it was made very clear, hey, we're going to build this team through the trenches, right? And they've been able to get some talent in the defensive line and the offensive line, and they've invested at those positions. But when you go through this roster, you can make an argument that their best young talent sits in the skill position groups, right? Whether it be a defensive back, wide receiver, quarterback. My question to you is, Mike, if I told you that Nebraska would, in terms of young talent, be loaded at those skill positions at the beginning of Matt Rule's tenure, how surprised would you have been?
I don't know that I'd be that surprised, and I don't know that I would 100% accept the argument. I think part of why it feels like it's loaded is that it's easier for a Ja'Cory Barney to get on the field than Grant Brooks.
Yeah.
Part of why it feels that it's loaded is that it's, going to be easier for Cortez Mills than Malcolm Simpson or Kate Petersack. Part of me here is like, hey, I get what you're saying, but I really like what they've done on both sides of the ball on the line. I mean, I am very intrigued by what the long-term future looks like with Nebraska's offensive line. And I say this as someone who really, really didn't believe in Donovan Rayola or his recruiting. And it wasn't all just him. They did a nice job, and they're doing a nice job utilizing what they can with staff members who aren't full-time coaches. But I like what they have there. But I see where you're going with it. It's a credit to me. There's a lot of credit that needs to be given to a guy who's no longer here, and Garrett McGuire. Like, I think this wide receiver room wouldn't look as good as it does from a younger player perspective if McGuire hadn't put in all of that time and effort with Ja'Cory Barney, with even some of the receivers that left, but also with Cortez Mills. And then a guy who we haven't talked about that could end up as a receiver, could be a tight end, could play on defense, the kid out of Kentucky, Jeremiah Johnson. And so, I mean, he's a really interesting one as well. And McGuire was a big part of that. He almost didn't come here when the report surfaced that McGuire wasn't going to be on the staff. So I think some of why we're excited about all of that has to do with now the Texas Tech running back coach. So Daikiel Shorts has a little bit for me to see him kind of prove in terms of wide receiver recruiting. Now it also helps that you get Jamar Mosey, who seems to be very helpful in that. Isaiah Mosey is a big part of this all too. So, it wasn't just Garrett McGuire. I'm just saying, for someone that was universally panned by the fans, but I think had a much larger role inside the stadium and was well regarded by the head coach, I do think we need to give Garrett McGuire a little credit.
Hey, we'll get chatter on this because of visits from coaches into homes and schools is starting, and you see whose priorities. Earlier this week, Tony White and Evan Cooper got on the jet, and they flew from Tallahassee down to Orlando, went in and visited C.J. Brona, who is a 4-star defensive back, one of the fastest guys in the state of Florida. And we went, Then John Butler and Addison Williams say, our first time with the coaches being on the road, we're coming to see you. They were in him yesterday. Your thoughts on how this recruiting is going, and then maybe even more important, the fact that Addison Williams is wearing a baseball jersey, not the pants, but the top in his visit into the home.
I don't know that I've ever seen a recruiting picture in the spring evaluation that's featured a better dressed, better attired individual than the baseball jersey that Addison Williams is wearing, which I think I last saw worn by anyone that could really rock it in the same get you fired up about it way by one Brendan Radley Hiles, the famous 2017 spring game that you and I were discussing Saturday at the stadium. So I loved seeing that from Addison Williams. I think TJ Brown is going to be a really tough keep for Nebraska. I have a lot of doubt that they're going to ward off everybody else who's after him. He's got tons of visits set up. He went from a commitment to Nebraska to kind of celebrating every offer, every visit, all the attention. And so it's not that I think it's not any disrespect towards Nebraska. It's just his level of recruitment went from, I'm a guy that's in a community that's largely known for producing professional golfers, but I happen to be really fast and a really good athlete, but nobody's going to notice me, to suddenly every team in the country knows who I am because I am one of the fastest players in this class. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm also 6'2".
Yeah.
Huh. They're interested. So I just think, he's living in the moment. I don't blame him at all for that. I just think it's going to be really hard for a Nebraska staff that nailed that initial valuation, that absolutely, utterly nailed it, to hold on to him. So that's a lot of credit. I think John Butler was a big part of that evaluation. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I'm trying to remember who else was really in on that one. But yeah, I mean, they had him in when he was an unranked kid out of Florida that had maybe Syracuse was another offer and a couple other teams, and he just committed to no fanfare last November. He's the last commit Nebraska's gotten in the 2026 class. And now, it'd be pretty impressive that they landed a player that's going to be ranked higher than CJ Brana on this 2026 class.
Yeah. Schaefer, as always, great seeing you last week. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the Derby, and we will talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
See you, Mike.
Go well.
Yeah, we're hoping for our young Matt.
Oh, my Kentucky Derby bets?
Yeah.
We're going to make some money, Mike.
Mike.